The smell of freshly brewed coffee and hot pancakes filled the morning air at Mike's Diner, a small but always bustling restaurant on the outskirts of New York. Rachel Carter, with her brown hair tied up in a messy bun, hurried through the kitchen door, letting out a sigh as the pain in her legs crept up after a hectic morning shift. Table 7. Order up. Tony, the diner's cook, yelled from behind the grill where sizzling bacon strips were cooking. Rachel quickly balanced 3 steaming plates of food, moving with practiced grace. She had been doing this job for over 6 years, but busy mornings like today still drained her energy. Omelette Denver with extra cheese, blueberry pancakes for the little guy, and chicken fried steak with a runny egg. The family at table 7 barely looked up from their phones. The dad scrolled through the news. The mom was texting away, and the young boy was engrossed in his tablet. Rachel smiled faintly. She was used to this. Being a waitress was like being a shadow, always present but rarely noticed. From the cash register, Mike Patterson, the diner's owner, called out sternly, "Jessica, you're late again?" "Sorry, boss. My babysitter canceled on me last minute, and I had to." I know. Mike waved his hand dismissively, but Rachel could hear the concern in his voice. Despite his gruff exterior, he always cared about his staff, especially single mothers like Jessica and herself. Rachel continued pouring coffee for the customers, but her mind wandered to another place, home with her mom, where Lily, her 8-year-old daughter, was probably doodling away. She could picture her daughter lying on the floor, markers scattered all around. The thought of it made her smile softly. "Rachel, how's Lily doing these days?" Rachel turned to see Margaret, a regular and close customer. "She's doing great. She even drew me a picture yesterday. I'll bring it in for you to see tomorrow. That little one's got talent. So different from my husband, who's 57 and can't even draw a stick figure properly." They both laughed. It was small moments like this that made Rachel appreciate the diner, even with the low pay and long hours. "Rachel Carter, take a break before the lunch rush starts," Mike ordered. Rachel breathed a sigh of relief, pulling out her phone as she stepped into the break room. A message from her mom popped up, along with a picture. Lily sitting amid a pile of markers and sketch paper, sticking out her tongue in concentration as she sketched something. "Your daughter?" Jessica entered, holding a cup of coffee. Rachel nodded. "Yep, she's busy creating another masterpiece." Jessica sighed. "Having a mom to help is so good. My parents are still in Ohio, and Daniel's dad, who knows where he is?" Rachel gently patted her friend's hand. "You're doing great. If you ever need anything, just call me." Jessica smiled, her eyes softening. Single moms have to help each other out, right? Suddenly, Tony peeked his head in with excitement. "Hey, there's a fancy car just parked outside. I think it's a celebrity." Rachel raised an eyebrow. VIP usually meant difficult customers and lousy tips. Jessica nudged her. "It's your shift. Good luck." Rachel took a deep breath, adjusted her name tag, and stepped out. As soon as the door opened, the air in the diner seemed to freeze. The customers began whispering. Outside, a group of bodyguards walked in first, checking everything as if they were protecting someone important. And then, a man appeared, a man all too familiar. Rachel blinked, hardly believing her eyes. Donald Trump had just walked into Mike's diner. Rachel swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure as the unexpected guest, Donald Trump, walked into the diner. All eyes turned toward him, whispers spreading as his bodyguards quickly checked around the area. Trump walked over to a vacant table near the counter and sat down. A strange silence settled over Mike's diner. Rachel took a deep breath, grabbed the menu, and walked over, her heart pounding. "Welcome to Mike's Diner. What can I get for you?" "Sir," she asked, trying to keep her tone professional. Trump looked up and flashed a friendly smile. "I've heard this is the place with the best pancakes in town. I'll have a blueberry pancake, sunny side-up eggs, and a black coffee." Rachel jotted it down quickly, unable to ignore the curious stares of the people around her. She did her best not to seem surprised or excited. After all, a customer was just a customer. The meal was served promptly. Trump ate while the murmurs from the surrounding tables continued. Rachel had served all sorts of customers, but she'd never had anyone this famous in the diner before. When Trump finished his meal, Rachel placed the bill on the table. He nodded, took out a bill, placed it down, and stood up. Before leaving, he looked at Rachel and said, "Thanks for the great meal. You work very hard." Rachel nodded politely, but when she looked down at the bill, she couldn't help but laugh. Trump had left a $5 tip. "Is that all?" she mumbled, shaking her head. Some of the wealthier customers left bigger tips. A former president leaving only $10? Jessica walked by and heard Rachel's laugh, so she curiously asked. When Rachel pointed to the bill, the two of them chuckled quietly. Donald Trump turned around, his sharp eyes narrowing. "Is something funny?" Rachel froze, but it was too late. She blurted out, "Nothing, sir. Thank you for coming to the diner." Without saying another word, Donald Trump turned and walked out. "Rachel Jean, Rachel." Pete's voice rang out. "Get to the office. Now." Rachel walked in, her heart racing. "Do you know what you just did?" Pete looked at her sternly. "You just pissed off the former president of the United States." Rachel almost burst into tears. "I'm sorry, boss. I need this job. My daughter." Pete sighed. "Go home, Rachel. Pray he doesn't post about this on social media." Rachel drove home, her mind spinning, but when she arrived, Emma ran out and hugged her, holding a picture she'd drawn for their neighbor. Rachel's eyes welled up. No matter how bad the day had been, at least she still had the most important thing, her daughter. "Why don't you go clean up your art supplies? And then we'll make cookies." "Okay." "Really? Can we make chocolate chip cookies?" "Of course. Go on, sweetie." As Emma ran off, Catherine Rachel turned to her daughter. "What happened? Why are you home 4 hours early and looking like you've seen a ghost?" Rachel sank down onto the porch swing, the same spot she used to sit in when she was a little girl. "Mom, I made a huge mistake today." She recounted the entire story, her voice catching as she mentioned Pete's reaction. Catherine listened closely, her face growing more worried with each detail. "Oh, Rachel," she sighed as the story ended. "You've got your father's temper." I know. It's just, oh my God. Mom, you should have seen the way he looked at me. Like I was something stuck to the bottom of his designer shoe. And then the tip. After I served him for an hour." "I understand you're frustrated, sweetie, but you know you can't show it, especially with someone like Mr. Trump." Rachel leaned back in the chair, staring up at the porch ceiling. "What if Pete fires me?" "He won't do that," Catherine asserted confidently. "Pete watched you grow up at that diner. He even knew your father. He won't fire you over one mistake." "But what if Trump complains to the company? Or worse, if he posts about it on social media? You know how quickly things like this can spread." Catherine was silent for a moment, gently rocking the swing. "Then we'll figure something out. When has our family not gotten through tough times? When your dad passed away, when Emma was so sick. We're the Rachel family. We never give up." From inside the house, they heard Emma's voice singing as she cleaned up her art supplies. The sound made Rachel's heart ache. Her daughter had been through so much: hospital stays, medications, treatments, and yet she still smiled, kept drawing, and still believed everything would be okay. "You should go help her," Rachel said, standing up. If no one watches her, her art supplies will be all over the place. Catherine took Rachel's hand. Everything will be okay. Rachel, whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it together. Rachel nodded, trying to believe it, but as she helped Emma clean her paintbrushes, organized the colored pencils, and the two of them mixed cookie dough, laughing at the paint streaked in Emma's hair, a lingering worry gnawed at her. Tomorrow was coming, and with it, the consequences she wasn't sure she could bear. That night, after Emma had fallen into a deep sleep and her mother had gone home, Rachel sat at the small kitchen table with her laptop open. She had been searching for a new job for hours, but most of the positions either required experience she didn't have or offered a lower salary than her current serving job. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jenny. "You're blowing up on Twitter." Someone posted about today's incident. Rachel nervously opened the social media app. Just as Jenny had said, there were countless posts about the event. Some defended her, others didn't. Waitstaff disrespects former President Donald Trump over a tip. Mike's Diner waitress learns a costly lesson in respect. "You're amazing. Stand up against the rich class." Rachel slammed the laptop shut, feeling nauseous. Tomorrow was going to be worse than she had thought. The morning came too quickly. Rachel hardly slept, tossing and turning, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. She kept checking her phone throughout the night, horrified to see this story spreading across the web. "Mom, are you sick?" Emma asked at breakfast, noticing the dark circles under her mother's eyes. "You look like when I had to go to the hospital." Rachel forced a smile, pushing the half-eaten toast aside. "I'm just a little tired." "Sweetie, eat your breakfast. Grandma's coming to take you to art class soon." "No, I want to go to the diner with you. I want to show Uncle Tony my new painting." "Not today. Sweetie, Mommy has something important to take care of at work." As she drove to Pete's Diner, the road felt shorter than usual. She gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then she saw it, a news van parked right outside. "Good Lord," she muttered, shrinking into her seat. "This can't be happening." Her phone buzzed again. Jenny calling. "Don't go in the front door," Jenny said urgently. "There are reporters." Rachel's stomach twisted. "Reporters? Are you kidding?" "No, it's blown up. Pete's been getting calls since 5 this morning." Rachel lowered her head and sneaked in through the back. From the front of the diner, she could hear shouting. "Is the waitress here today? Do you have a comment about what happened with Trump? Has the Trump family contacted you?" In the break room, everyone was gathered around the small TV, where a news anchor was covering the story right outside the diner. Yesterday, a confrontation between a waitress and former President Donald Trump caused an uproar on social media. "There she is," Tony shouted as he spotted Rachel. "Our famous girl." "This is not fun, Tony," Rachel groaned, slumping into a chair. "This is a nightmare." Jenny handed her a cup of coffee. "It'll blow over soon. These things die down fast." Rachel, in my office now." Pete's voice rang from inside the office. The walk to the office seemed longer than usual. When she entered, Pete wasn't alone. A well-dressed man was sitting in the chair. "Rachel, this is James Montgomery. He's from the company's office." Rachel felt the ground beneath her feet shift. "Ms. Rachel," Montgomery said, his voice cold. "We have a lot to discuss." She was told to report the next morning at 9 a.m. at the Fairmont Hotel, room 512. This wasn't optional. Transportation would be provided. The sun had barely risen when a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of her house. Rachel had been ready for hours, pacing the living room while her mother tried to reassure her. "Maybe it's something good," Catherine said, adjusting her daughter's collar for the 10th time. "Maybe he wants to apologize." Rachel laughed weakly, her voice trembling. "Right. Because billionaires are always apologizing to waitresses who dare disrespect them. You never know. Just stay calm this time. Okay. The drive to the Fairmont Hotel was silent. The Secret Service agent from the night before sat in the front seat, occasionally glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Rachel's mind kept racing with possibilities, each scenario worse than the last. The Fairmont Hotel came into view, its glass windows gleaming in the morning sun. Rachel had passed by this place countless times, but had never set foot inside. The doorman gave her a strange look as the agent led her through the lobby. It was clear she didn't belong here, dressed in her cheap store-bought dress and worn-out shoes. Room 512 was at the end of a plush, carpeted hallway. The agent knocked twice, then stepped aside. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest as if it might explode. The door opened, and there stood Donald Trump, even more polished than the day before in an expensive suit, possibly worth more than Rachel's car. "Miss Rachel," he said coolly, "please, come in." The room was larger than Rachel's house. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, and the furniture looked too expensive to even touch. "Sit." Trump gestured to a chair next to a massive mahogany desk. Rachel sat on the edge of the chair, her hands tightly clasped together. Trump took a moment to arrange some papers before looking up. "Do you know why you're here?" Rachel swallowed. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. My behavior was completely unprofessional and..." Trump raised his hand, signaling for silence. "Tell me about your daughter." Rachel froze, confused by the sudden change in subject. "Emma, what about her? How old is she?" "She's 8. She'll be 9 next month." "And she's sick?" Trump nodded slightly. "I saw the medical bill tracking app on your phone last night." Rachel's throat tightened. "Yes, she has leukemia. We caught it early, and the doctors are optimistic. But the treatment costs are really high." Trump nodded. "I had my people look into you last night. Single mother, working 3 jobs to cover medical expenses. Your daughter is very talented. Her art teacher says she has real potential." Rachel couldn't believe her ears. You investigated me?" "Of course. I need to understand." "Understand what?" Trump leaned back in his chair, studying Rachel with unreadable eyes. "Understand why someone with 6 years of experience, an excellent record, and a clean resume would risk everything for a $5 tip." Rachel's face burned with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Trump. I was just..." "Don't apologize again," Trump interrupted. "That tip was a test." "A test?" "Exactly. A test you failed spectacularly." There was a hint of amusement in his voice. "But maybe that failure is even more interesting than passing." Trump opened a drawer and pulled out a check. Rachel's stomach tightened. Was he trying to buy her silence? Pay her off to avoid a scandal? "Mr. Trump, I don't need your money." "I know." Trump quickly wrote something on the check, then tore it off and held it up. Rachel barely had time to glimpse the numbers. Lots of zeros. "This isn't charity money," Trump continued. "It's not an apology. It's an investment in your daughter's future, medical bills, art classes, college fund. Use it wisely." Rachel stared at the check, completely confused by what was happening. "But why?" Trump spoke softly. "Because sometimes, the people who least deserve help are the ones who need it the most." Rachel shook her head, feeling as though she were in a strange dream. "You don't have to do this." "I know." Trump placed the check on the table and pushed it toward Rachel. "But I want to." Rachel stared at it, her mind spinning with questions. Was this a trap? Another test? A price she hadn't yet realized? "I don't understand. Why do you care about me and my daughter?" Trump shrugged, crossing his arms. "Maybe because I've been a father worried about my child's future. Maybe because I've seen hundreds of hardworking people like you who never get a chance to break free from that cycle. Or maybe because I just like your daughter. The painting she made, it's beautiful." Rachel's eyes widened. "My niece used to paint like that before she passed away." Everything seemed to stop. In that moment, Rachel felt as if she had just received both a curse and a blessing at the same time. Rachel's eyes widened. You saw Emma's paintings?" Trump gave a slight smile. "Just a few that her teacher shared on social media. She's really talented." Rachel felt tears welling up in her eyes. This wasn't what she had expected when she walked into this room. "There's one condition," Trump said. Rachel stiffened. "Of course, there's always a condition. What's the condition?" Trump leaned forward, his sharp gaze fixed on her. "You have to promise me you'll never let bitterness, anger, or pride cloud your judgment again. This world is tough enough. Rachel, if someone reaches out to help, accept it." Rachel swallowed, feeling a heavy, invisible weight pressing on her chest. She looked down at the check. This money could change Emma's life. What right did she have to turn it down? Slowly, almost trembling, Rachel reached out and took the check. Trump watched her, a satisfied smile flickering on his lips. "Good. Now go. Your daughter's waiting." Rachel stood up, feeling as though her legs were no longer steady beneath her. "Thank you," she whispered. Trump merely nodded and returned to the stack of papers on his desk, as if the conversation had never happened. Rachel walked out of the room, her mind spinning. When the door closed behind her, she suddenly realized her life had just changed forever. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Mike's diner as Rachel tied on her apron, ready for her first shift back after the meeting. The media frenzy had cooled down, though a few curious customers still came in, eager to hear the story firsthand. "Look who's back," Tony called from the kitchen. "Our famous friend has returned." Jenny rushed over and hugged Rachel. "Oh my God, you have to tell me everything. What happened at that hotel?" Rachel just smiled mysteriously, just as Trump had suggested. "Let's just say, things went better than expected." "Better than expected?" Pete came out from the office, arms crossed. Rachel, you've been avoiding my questions for days. The press is still calling. Montgomery's acting strange. And suddenly everyone's talking about a profit-sharing program. What really happened?" Before Rachel could answer, the door chimed. A young woman in an elegant suit entered, carrying a leather folder. "Ms. Rachel," she said, walking up to the counter. "I'm Jared Kushner, Mr. Trump's assistant. Do you have a moment?" Pete's eyes widened. Jenny almost dropped the coffee pot. Rachel followed Jared to a quiet table. "Everything okay? Did Mr. Trump?" "Everything's fine," Jared reassured her, opening the folder. "I'm just here to finalize some details for Emma's trust and medical arrangements. Mr. Trump wants to make sure everything is set up properly." "All those numbers on that check, still hard to believe," Rachel admitted, glancing at the documents Jared was organizing. "Mr. Trump believes in second chances," Jared said softly. "He always has." The following weeks drifted by, peaceful and full of promise. It felt like life was starting to settle into a new rhythm, as though everything was gently falling into place. Emma, full of excitement and energy, began her new art classes. She threw herself into the lessons, her enthusiasm contagious. The talented instructors were amazed by her natural ability and unique perspective. With each passing week, she made remarkable strides in her artistic journey, discovering new techniques and approaches. It was a world she had never imagined she'd be a part of. And now it was her world, one brushstroke at a time. Her teachers, too, recognized something special in Emma, and they began to invest more time and attention into nurturing her potential. It was clear this was just the beginning of her artistic blossoming. Meanwhile, the news from the doctor was equally positive. After months of uncertainty, the test results were in, and they showed real signs of improvement. The treatment plan that had felt like a long shot at times was finally starting to show tangible progress. Rachel, while cautiously optimistic, couldn't help but feel a surge of relief and hope for her daughter's future. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they could finally see the path ahead more clearly. For the first time in a long while, Rachel allowed herself to imagine what life could be like on the other side of all this. The diner, too, experienced a noticeable transformation. The atmosphere felt different, lighter, more energized. Montgomery's profit-sharing program, something that had been in the works for a while, had finally taken off. For the first time in ages, Rachel and the senior staff were given bonuses. It wasn't just a financial lift, it was an emotional one as well. After so many years of hard work, this recognition was something they had long hoped for but never fully expected. The joy and pride were evident in everyone's eyes. Rachel's team, long accustomed to the grind, now found themselves sharing smiles and laughter they hadn't realized they'd been missing. It was a small victory, but it meant so much more. Pete, ever the creative spirit, seized this newfound attention, recognizing the power of community and the local love for the diner. He decided to host a weekly art exhibition. It was an idea that had been brewing in his mind for a while, and now seemed like the perfect time to bring it to life. The exhibition showcased the incredible talent of the local children, turning the diner into a mini gallery of vibrant color and imagination. It was a place where every painting told a story, and every artist, no matter how young, felt valued. Emma's artwork, of course, was front and center, her pieces proudly displayed for everyone to admire. The opening night of the exhibition was a hit. Families, friends, and neighbors flocked to the diner to see the artwork, and they found themselves captivated by the passion and creativity that had been pouring out of the young artists. For Emma, it was a moment of true pride. As she stood among the paintings, she realized something she hadn't before. Art wasn't just about creating something beautiful, it was about sharing a piece of yourself with the world. And with every brushstroke, she was doing just that. As the weeks passed, both the diner and its people continued to grow. Each day brought new opportunities and new lessons. For Rachel, there was a newfound sense of balance in her life, one that she hadn't realized she was missing. There was hope in the air, and with it, a sense that they were stepping into a future filled with possibility. The quiet transformation happening around her was undeniable, and it was the kind of change that filled her heart with excitement for what was yet to come. That morning, the diner buzzed with an unusual excitement. The doors were shut for the day to prepare for a special occasion that had everyone feeling a little bit extra. The place was filled with energy as the staff worked quickly, hanging colorful balloons from the ceiling and unfurling bright banners that read, "Celebrating Art and Tradition." The hustle and bustle of it all was electrifying. And it wasn't just the staff who were feeling the anticipation. Local news stations had shown up too, cameras rolling as they captured the scene unfolding. This was no ordinary day, and everyone could feel it. In the midst of the preparation, Emma stood in front of the mirror in her small, cozy room in the back of the diner, gently tugging at the hem of her new dress. It was a soft pink fabric, and the first new outfit she'd owned in years that wasn't secondhand. It wasn't just the color or the style that made it special, it was the way it made her feel. It was hers, and that alone gave her a sense of pride she hadn't felt in a long time. She turned to her mom, a bit of uncertainty in her voice. "Mom, am I really giving Mr. Trump a painting?" Her eyes were wide, a mix of awe and nervousness. Rachel smiled warmly, brushing Emma's hair back from her face, giving her a quick, tender look in the mirror. "That's right. "Sweetheart." He asked for it. She tucked a stray lock of hair behind her daughter's ear and adjusted the ribbon that Emma had carefully tied herself earlier that morning. Emma's painting was already on display in the front of the diner, proudly placed on a stand near the counter. It was the centerpiece of the day's event, a beautiful recreation of that fateful day when everything had changed for them. The painting featured Emma's version of the scene that had become a part of their story: a smiling waitress, an elegant customer, and a small but significant $5 bill tucked into the corner of the canvas. The same bill that had started it all, the one that carried so much more meaning now than just a small tip. As the event approached, the Secret Service arrived first, the silent professionals in their dark suits. Scanning the area with practiced precision, they methodically checked every corner of the diner, ensuring that everything was in order before the main event. After them came the local officials, each shaking hands and offering warm smiles. Excited about the attention this event was bringing to their town, the media followed suit, snapping photos and conducting brief interviews with those gathered. The energy was palpable. Everyone knew that today was something different. Finally, the sleek black SUV appeared outside. It pulled up to the diner with quiet grace, and the door opened to reveal none other than Donald Trump, stepping out in his signature suit, looking exactly as Rachel remembered him, impeccable, with the same confident stride that she had seen on television so many times before. But there was something different this time. As he walked towards her, their eyes met, and there was a moment, a brief yet powerful moment, where Rachel could see something in his expression that she hadn't expected: warmth, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. The ceremony itself was short but meaningful. Trump took the stage, standing in front of the gathered crowd, and spoke about the things that had brought him here today. His words about preserving American traditions, about the value of hard work, and about the real connections that make a community strong resonated deeply with everyone in the room. It was clear this wasn't just a publicity event for him. It was something he truly cared about. Rachel, standing off to the side, couldn't help but feel proud of the way the moment had unfolded, grateful for the recognition and the opportunity it had brought her and Emma. Then, it was Emma's turn. Her heart raced as she stepped forward, her hands trembling just a little. She was shy, unsure of herself, but this was her moment. The moment she had dreamed of when she first picked up her paintbrush and started creating. She walked up to Trump, her small frame standing tall despite the nervousness that bubbled up inside her. With a soft, almost hesitant voice, Emma offered her painting. "This is for you, Mr. Trump," she said, holding it out to him. Trump knelt down to her level, his eyes lighting up as he carefully examined the painting. He took his time, studying every detail, every stroke. "This is a wonderful painting," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "You captured that moment perfectly, Emma, and the $5 bill, too. I see you've added something very special there." He glanced at the bill in the corner, a knowing smile on his face. Emma beamed at the compliment. "Mom says it's the magic $5 bill," she said proudly. "She says sometimes the best tips aren't money." Trump's eyes sparkled as he looked at Rachel, a glint of something unspoken passing between them. "Your daughter is very smart," he said, nodding in approval. Then, with a playful smile, he pulled out a crisp $100 bill from his pocket and held it out to Emma. "But perhaps this time," he continued, his voice warm with kindness, "we can upgrade the tip a little." He placed the $100 bill gently on the counter in front of her, and the entire diner erupted in laughter. It wasn't just the surprise of the amount, it was the spirit in which it was given. Rachel laughed the loudest, the joy in her heart bubbling over. This moment was about more than just money or recognition. It was about connection, about a journey that had started with a small act of kindness and had blossomed into something much bigger. As the laughter settled, Emma stood there, her heart swelling with pride. She had given her painting to someone who truly appreciated it, and in return, she had received something far more valuable than money: the knowledge that her art and her heart could make a difference. That evening, as she closed the diner, Rachel looked around the familiar space, now transformed into something much more special. Pete poured her a cup of coffee. "Rachel, after all these years managing this place, I never thought a $5 bill could change everything." Rachel smiled, remembering Donald Trump's words, "Sometimes, the smallest tips lead to the biggest changes." "Pete, you just have to be brave enough to laugh along with them."